society is talked about by a guy named Michael Drew. Now, Michael Drew is a literary agent who has had 80 plus consecutive bestsellers on the New York Times list. That's major. That's major. He kind of has the grasp of society and the grasp of what people want and what people are buying. And he wrote a book. His book is called Pendulum. And in this book, he and his partner researched human nature for the last 3,000 years. And what they found is that there's a pendulum shift that occurs every 40 years, that we change as human beings and as society. And that's that society shifts from 40 years focusing on me. I'm so great, I'm going to do everything, I can change the world by myself. And then, after doing that for enough time to realize, well, that's kind of hard by myself, then it shifts to 40 years focusing on we. We can do this together, let's join together, let's all come together and make this happen. And then we get tired of the group, and we go back to the me. So where are we right now? Right now, we're on a we, exactly. Right now, we are in year, I think, 15 or 12, year 12 in the we cycle. Started in 2003. And the way Michael Drew explains it is that in this 40-year time period, the first 10 years is the transition time, transitioning from me to we. Then the next 20 years is deep into that concept. And on our concept of we, when Michael Drew talks about it, the word he uses most is authenticity. So that's the society shift that we're now stepping into in a real heavy, deep way, that authenticity is critical. Society's asking for it. The baby boomers are saying, you know, we lived our life and the me and it didn't work, so we need to pull this we together. How do I find me after I did all the stuff for the corporation and now I want to move forward? Anybody in that position? You know, whereas the millenniums are like, I don't like the way you guys got this society hooked up. I can't do what I want to do. I want to self-actualize. I was here to do something. So they've taken Maslow's theory, which some of you may know, where he talks about self-actualization. We all want shelter and food first, and self-actualization last. The younger kids now have reversed that. They want self-actualization first. They're more concerned with that than they are with shelter. So both sides, ages, both generations are focused on authenticity. It's time for that right now. Now, authenticity is also talked about in corporate America. There's lots of literature about authentic leadership. And these are written by people who are pretty much in ivory towers. They're academicians. So you'll get a lot from people from Harvard, a guy named Bill George, also two people named Gilmore and Pines. Gilmore and Pines wrote a book that came out in 2008. And that book was called Authenticity, What Consumers Want in the 21st Century. And from a corporate perspective, what he said is that corporations that are becoming very successful now are companies that are having more authenticity in their environment. So he referred to Starbucks, for example, as one of the first companies that offered authenticity. And by that, what they talked about was that when you go into Starbucks, it's just not a cup of coffee. It's an experience. You might have poets speaking, you might meet with somebody, you're doing different things. It's activities. He talked about American Girl Store. If you know about American Girl Store, you can take your daughter or granddaughter there, and they come and they pick a doll that looks just like them. And they get to pick all the decorations all the way to make the daughter up, make up the doll so that it becomes a replica of who they are. It's an experience. They talked about Disney and how Disneyland and Disney World draw you in. They open their stores. The store is bombed because the stores were not an experience. It was just a store, like any other store. So the idea of experience is really important now. And what they're talking about in terms of authentic leadership is that what authentic leadership is about, the foundation of it, is self-awareness and knowing oneself. Because that's not really what corporates offer, right? But it certainly is something that makes a difference in the world. I was on my call last night with my agents of authenticity, and we talked about this. And one of them, in fact, Rosa, who's here in the room now, said, well, Norma, what you do is you answer the question, who am I? And that's actually what authenticity asks that question and answers that question. But the thing about the academics is that they tell you what authenticity is and what authentic leadership is, but they don't tell you how to achieve it. But guess what? The authenticity grid that most of you know about helps you to do that. So we know that we're right there at the right time. And the third thing I want to mention about why society and why it's time for authenticity is some of the companies out there now. There is a major shift going on in how companies do business. And if you look at a company like Google, for example, if you go to Google, you see people that don't want to go home. They have made family environment there in their company. Sometimes I do focus groups, and I did one, they wanted people who have online courses, and I did one just Wednesday, 2 days ago. And it was from 6 to 8, it was in Santa Monica. And I got there about 5:45, and the whole place was booming. People were in jeans, walking around, doing work. When they had us go to the area to do the focus group, the guy had his dog there. They were playing games with the TV. When I left at 8:30, they were still there engaged. That's the new way that companies are beginning to do business. And in the workplace wellness arena, which I've learned also about from Rosalind, thank you, they're talking a lot about creating firms of endearment so that firms, companies, have more cooperation going on within them. They're doing things a little differently. The firms of endearment, they're also talking about the soul of the company, that your company has to have a soul. Who did that? They corporate. But that's the transition we're making right now. That's where corporate is going. We may not, most of us in here are a little older and did all the corporate work if we did it years ago. But now you're seeing how it's transitioning. And we are kind of the leaders. We are the ones who know authenticity, understand the value of authenticity, and understand how to help get it out in why it's so important. Any questions about why it's time for authenticity? Or any other things that maybe you have seen that maybe relate to and validate the issues of authenticity being important right now? You agree that it is, though, right? Absolutely. Yes.
Well, I was just going to think that one of the reasons about the endearment that you were saying about the firms of endearment, because there's no longer the the security of the paycheck for 20 years, and so it's often that companies now are trying to find other ways to attract people to stay and be committed, and so they have to get into what do the people want and what do they need, and so that makes an employee, I think, a little more loyal to a company that anticipates and thinks about the other aspects of their life to make it comfortable and easy to stay connected to the company.
Right. That's so true. And that's what's happened a lot. The loyalty and the companies have spent so much money trying to attract new employees, and to train new employees. They're looking for ways to have more engagement. Engagement's a word you hear a lot. And in the training industry itself, they've changed a lot, where before, and in our time, it was probably all lecture. And authenticity, what I've done here, in many times has been mostly lecture. Some of you have spoken on my stage, and you've shared your story, you've done it in lecture format. So now they're saying that the most effective training is 70% engagement, 70% interaction, 20% coaching, and 10% lecture. So in light of all of that, what's been swirling around in my head, amongst all the other things, is how do I take this authenticity and really make it work? How can I do that? So I've had the swirl has been swirling around games, around corporate games, and how do I do that? So I was thinking about, okay, I can write a game. I'm a smart girl. I wrote a whole program. I can write a game, no problem. So I got a call in May from a lady who invited me to take part in a training called Play to Win. And I told her, I can't do that. I can't even walk. I can't drive. Most of you know I broke my foot back on March the 6th. And those who know me really well know that I was saying, what's this all about? Why did I break my foot? I just had such a great week. I had just come back from a speaking engagement for 3 days, and I was like, it was like, Norma, Norma, Norma. And I'm saying, yes, I can just do this. And I was walking down the stairs to go to the market and broke my foot right in my house. Now, it took me several months later to realize, it was just like, slow down. I got a message for you. I want you to do this game thing. And you're going another direction, so just slow down a little bit. And then 5 weeks later, I fell again and hurt my back really bad. And it's like, No, Norma, slow down. So I did, and I listened. And I found this program called Corporate Games. If you go around, oh, that's Joanne. I just told them that Joanne comes to many of my things, but she always slips in, and like she did now, she slips in and slips out, and I never know she's there. And Linda will say, Joanne was there, and I'll say, who? Where is she? I don't know what she looks like. That was an entrance.
Thank you so much. No, I just got back in town last night, and I had a flat tire in my car sitting in my garage.
Oh, well, I'm glad you overcame that and made that happen.
I did.
Yes, I'm
I
glad
was
that you did.
determined. Hello, ladies.
Thank
Hello.
you. So all that says to me that it's time. And this training that I went, which was just so dynamic, you know, I go to a lot of trainings, but I have never been to one that inspired me as much as this one did. I came home and wrote like 8 games. And I said, I have this grid, and I already have the concepts. All I got to do is write the game. And since I'm creative anyway, the games just build out. Today you're going to see the game that I designed when we were in San Diego last November. I'm very excited about it. And I want you, and your fee for being here today is to complete an 8-page evaluation form at the end. I know it's a lot, but that's what I'm asking from you, because there's a lot of information. This is my beta. This is the first game we've done, so it's the first time you get a chance to actually see the game and get involved. It's also the first time I'm getting any feedback. So I'm going to pick your brains as much as I can while I have you here and look at how we can market this thing. I also want your feedback about how it's going to impact industries, both from public games and corporate games. My plan is to do a game every other month, to introduce 6 games this year. This is the first one. The second game will be introduced in March, April, around that time. The third one, the date is June the 6th. I got that date already. And you'll hear about more of that as we go along. Today, the format for today, first of all, the bathrooms are, you go out the door and go to your right. And go down the street, go down the hall. And we're going to do 1 game, we're going to do 2 games today. Most games I am designing to be about a 3-hour period, 3 to 4 hour period. Today, there's 3 parts to every game, every process. It's educate, engage, empower. So the first part, which I'll start in a few minutes and just spend a short time on, is to educate you on some concepts that I want you to understand. The second part is the engage, and that is the actual game itself. That's where the majority of the time will be taken. We will have a break after the educate part. You will go out of the room, everyone will leave the room, the door will be closed, and you will not come in until you are invited at the end, about 15 minutes after you start the break. And that's when the game will actually begin. And then while the game is going on for a couple hours, you need to go to the bathroom, go. Well, no breaks, just go as you need to go and just play and we'll have a good time. Then at the end of that, we will have a personal debrief, and that's the empower piece. When you empower yourself to use what you've learned and take it out into the world. And that will be a personal debrief that you'll do, and then you'll also do a group debrief. And that will all conclude, and then you'll get the evaluation form to do. And that will all conclude right about 2 o'clock. Then there will be an hour break, and those that can stay for the next hour, we'll have an introduction, a 1-hour introduction to another game. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I want you to get enough feedback, enough feel for what we're doing so you can see what it's like. See if you might want to participate. Every game is being designed to be led by a maximum of 4 people. And the games are being designed to be done for a group of up to 500. Except that I just completed an application yesterday from the Illinois SHRM, Society of Human Resource Managers. And I got it from a girl that's on the bureau. And interestingly enough, they wanted keynote speakers. Their whole theme is, guess what? Games. Oh, wow. Isn't that great? So I called the lady to say, well, is the room a room where the chairs are stationary, where they're auditorium, sealed down, or can they move around? She can move around. I said, good, because I do games. I gotta figure which one I want to send you. So I quickly wrote one, because I've been doing activities for a long time, that I could do for a room of 700. Yes. So, you know, some games are games that are group games, and some games are games that are one-on-one individual games. So I said, I can't do a group game with them. That's going to be too hard to manage in a 90-minute period. But I just took some of the activities I've done before, some of the concepts of authenticity, and put together a one-person game where you can learn by doing it yourself using concepts I've already developed with authenticity. So I say that to say, I can write games. So if you need a game, and I'll be writing them consistently. What I have finally, you know, I've met so many people, with some of you in the room, who said, can't you just do one thing? Where are you going? The answer is no. That's not who I am. But now what I feel so great about is I found an environment where all of those can come into one. And all of the people that I've collected, if you don't mind using that word, over the years who supported authenticity in one way or another, I see it all coming together. So I guess that's why I broke my foot, slowed down a little bit, and listened, and found out, and now moving in that direction. So yes.
When you're asked to develop a game for a keynote or for a group, do they give you a topic, or are you just building everything around authenticity?
No. Well, often, from my angle, everything I do leads to authenticity.
Okay.
It may not be specific to a grid or to something we already have. So, for example, the game that I sent yesterday, I'll tell you about that. First, in my mind, I wanted to do it around my poem, The Masquerade, because I have a game about that deals with the legacy dimension. Those are the dimensions. Legacy is about gifts and talents. And masquerade is we all wear masks and not being our true selves. But I couldn't figure out how to do that and not do the groups, because the groups are going to be too challenging with 700 people. So I just paused, stopped and listened for a little while, and I came up with a program that I've done before. So in the same dimension of legacy, there is an assessment that enables you to examine what I call the wisdom gifts, which, if you know about the multiple gifts of intelligence, Dr. Howard Gardner, though that's his work, and I just changed the name. And it basically talks about the different ways that he did it for teachers to look at how children learn, because schools do things the same way. He said, well, some kids learn by verbal, some learn by visual, and he went through the whole bit. So I'm saying, how can I do this? Now, I've done some training before with groups up to 300, where I've given them this assessment that you'll find in the legacy inventory, which is here if anyone wants to look at it. And in that inventory, you get a chance to see, of these 8 wisdom gifts, which ones you're strongest in. So what I could do, rather than group them, is everybody, the educate part, take the assessment. Everybody figure out what your 8 gifts are. Now prioritize them from the top from the most, where you have the most gifts. So like my gifts are verbal and mathematical, logical, and visual. So with my top gift is mathematical logical, okay? So what I would do then, once I get that score, all of us, I'm going to go look in this group of 700 people, and we're going to create a group of all of those whose first gift is mathematical logical. Make sense? Now there's 8 groups, and within each group, I'm trying to find somebody who has 8 gifts in the same order that mine are. Okay, you hear me? Okay. Now, the reality is, I've done this before in a larger group. Don't nobody have gifts the same, because it just doesn't work that way. Occasionally, very, very rarely, but where's the lesson there? The lesson is, no wonder we can't get along, we're so different. Okay? So I respect you more because I understand your gifts. And maybe, leaders, I can take this person who has this gift to do this job that this person that had that gift doesn't do well. And I can look at my team a little differently and see how I can structure it and make a difference. So I would love to give that one game to 700 HR professionals. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just one game. I was able to come up with that because I've done the work in the past, and I had the framework, and I had the theme, and just matching them together. So writing a game is not that much of a challenge if you got a mathematical logical gift. Now what that gift means is you can see the big picture. And I'm verbal so I can speak about it, and I'm visual so I can illustrate. Those are my particular gifts. What are your gifts? And so it's a way to grow that. Other questions? Just gave you a little tip of the game's all about. You're going to get a different thing today.
So you talked about the one game utilizing one of your poems as the premise to do that. Are you utilizing, are all your games kind of working off of other work and things that you have to develop the game as a personalized corporate game?
Yes, they're based on the dimensions of authenticity, which is the authenticity grid. How many of you do not know anything about the grid? Raise your hand if you don't know anything about the grid. There's only like 3 of you, 4 of you. Okay, I'm not going to do that training now, but the grid is, there is a sample grid. Linda's going to hold it up. This is, and hold up the corporate one there on the black one. Yeah. So you can come look at that. There's a personal grid and a corporate grid. And essentially what it says is that each of us have 3 voices. In order to be authentic, you have 3 voices: your inner voice, your outer voice, and your expressive voice. Your inner voice being the voice that speaks within, that nobody hears but you, which is the foundation of your authenticity, who you really are. The other is your outer voice, how people see you, and what they assume about you based on what they see. And the other voice is your expressive voice, who you have become in the world, and how you live your life. And then it's broken down into dimensions, 3 dimensions each, which is where the games come in. So each of those voices has 3 dimensions to it, and each dimension has 1 or more games. So now I all of a sudden have 2 games for Legacy. I already had a game for Legacy. So you see it can go deep as well. And then it's a matter of identifying what does the company need, and then we give them the game that they need based on that. And then there's another game called the Authenticity Maze game, which is the one I'm going to do on June the 6th, which takes the whole assessment and turns it into a game. So it makes a whole different way to really assess yourself and evaluate where you're at. Other questions? Yes?
So in a corporate environment, you're going to have people who are resistant to games. What's the modality to sort of break down that wall initially to get them engaged to take part and really bring themselves to the experience?
Well, Paul, my answer to that is that I'm looking for some real good salespeople. Okay? So in the last years of trying to figure out what's happening with me, where am I going, what's the voice saying, the one thing I'm very, very clear in is I finally have found my lane, the one that I want to stay in. And so all the rest of the stuff I've been doing for years, I'm looking for people to take those parts of it. Because I'm real clear that I do not have strength in certain areas. I see what they are more than I ever have before. And so I'm really seeking very much to fill those slots. And you'll see some of those questions in the evaluation asking you and others if you'd like to fill some of those slots. So there'll be conversation, and we're looking at, another question we're looking at is the whole marketing piece of it. Because as you know, you have to focus to some direct market. And so that's where I'm going to want your feedback as well. So all of this is coming together. So I'm looking for a marketing team, looking for a sales team, looking for, and I'm going to need administrators, you know. I've done all that stuff in the past. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. I did it because I had to, you know. But, you know, I'm ready to pass it on now. And I also understand how this whole thing can really be much larger. We've always said that, but how do you do it? And now we have some clarity about how it can be done. So it's a matter of finding the people who buy in on the dream, as crazy as it might be. But so far, we've had a lot of unseen supporters helping us along the way. And I'm expecting that's not going to stop. So it's just a matter of getting the right people who have that understanding and who really want to help to take that and make it something. Because I really think it's something that will, I certainly have been led to it. And I have heard confirmations along the way that validate that it's what it is to be. And also big confirmations that I don't need to do some of that stuff. So. Other questions?
Once games, if you will, because I was really reluctant to it, gets caught on to society, it'll actually move on once people understand what she's doing. Because I actually belong to the same training organization run for the same thing. That it's going to be much easier once we start realizing it, because it is the thing of the future. And there's a gentleman out there, Clinton Swain, who's the leader of it, and he's opening up much of the world right now, because we're just starting to catch on to what he does. So once he's out there and he leads the way, and people start seeing things, authenticity games will be easily, much more easily marketable and everything else out there.
Yes.
And so, in that environment, so you're hired in to come into the corporate environment to do training and utilizing the things. After it's over, are you looking at, providing also additional products and things of that sort? So they purchase either as an individual or as a corporation, or how does that?
There will be products as well, but what I